I'm a very emotional person. I'm also a very nostalgic person. So for me, what triggered all of this was like a really bad breakup that happened like senior year of high school. And so if you go all the way back to my Instagram, you can see where it's like in 2014, I was like, I'm going to make a film called Without You. Like it goes all the way back 7 years ago now. At the time, after going through that breakup, like everyone else who goes through a breakup in high school, it feels like the end of the world, and it's like that's the worst things can possibly get. I felt like I went through like a death in a way, like that I didn't really know how to react to it. But I felt like a piece of me, like a piece of my emotional pie was like sliced and like thrown in the trash can. And so for me, I didn't feel complete, and I didn't know who I was really, because that relationship sort of defined a piece of who I was. And that was like my first time dealing with like some type of loss. So naturally, me being a filmmaker, like to kind of feel like this angst, I wanted to make something from that. My idea of, my relationship with my parents has been such an important thing for me. That's the anchor. That's what holds me down. That's what keeps me together. And so, thinking back to that relationship that ended everything kind of like senior year of high school, like that was terrible. Like that was a big breakup. And that was a big sort of thing that happened in my life, a big event where it almost felt like the end of the world. But as I matured and as I got older, like I went through more relationships, I went through more breakups, and like they became normal. It wasn't something that like each breakup felt like the end of the world. The thing that always stayed constant was that whenever those breakups happened, I had someone to call, and that was my mom. And that was something I could always kind of look forward to if anything wrong was happening. And that was just something that just kind of stayed in the back of my head every single time, was that, okay, no matter what happens, this person's always there for me. So, back in 2020 when I had to quarantine back in Texas, that became really self-evident how tight-knit of like a unit that I had as, my parents. And as I was trying to write this film over that time, I kind of said, you know what, the idea of like writing about a breakup, like that doesn't really do anything for me. But when I think about losing a parent and going through that permanent breakup of death, like that really brings up a lot of emotion, that like just tears me apart. And so I leaned into that as sort of inspiration, because my biggest thing was, do I follow this cliche that's sort of easy to write and it's very like formulaic, or do I lean into this thing that every single time I think about it, I just want to like break down and cry and like I can't focus? And so clearly like leaning into the emotional side was what I did. And so I wrote the first draft in like one day. I literally was, for the first time ever, sat down, and it wasn't like I was thinking, okay, what would happen next? What would happen here? I literally was just typing, and it just didn't stop. And I went from page 1 to page 18 in the matter of a couple hours, and it was so fluid and felt so fresh. And that was the first time I've ever done something where the idea, the concept was so clear, and like the intention was there. And so it's strange how, obviously I think everyone knows, family, friends, the people around them don't live forever, but it was such a weird thing that affected me so strongly during quarantine, that it really like left a really strong impression on me, and like that just made me think about losing, my parents and what that's going to do to me. And so it was like I just took this time, almost like therapy, to write about that, and write about what that feels like when I go through a breakup and I can't call my mom and I can't reach out to someone like that. It's like I have to then deal with on my own. What is that going to be like? I don't know if I can deal with that. What are the repercussions of that going to be like when I'm in a relationship? And I know what it feels like to lose a parent, like now, or I know what it feels like to lose, like, someone to death, like a parent. And so when I get married, like, I know then it's going to feel like when I lose them or they lose me, like, I don't know if I want to go through that, because that seems too intense. So there was all these just different questions that popped up for the first time. And again, me being the emotional, nostalgic person, like me looking back in the past, like that was, all of these things were just sort of bubbling up. So it was just like this really cathartic experience that was just like really intense. It's one of those things where that's what makes art so beautiful, is that you can make projects, you can make projects about, any sort of topic, but it's like it really is a commitment to sit down and go, okay, I want to go down this like rabbit hole, because it's like a really dark hole, because it's just you're constantly surrounding yourself with ideas that are just not the best. Like, I had to think about my parents passing away, like every time I wrote a new draft of this film, every single time that I was like blocking out with actors what we were gonna do. Like, you're constantly in this dark bubble, but it's for the betterment of like your sort of just like sanity, because you need to like work through this. So it was like the first time I really felt immersed as like a filmmaker, and not just like someone gave me a treatment, we made it, and then like the next day we're on to something else. I've never made a film before. I've only made commercials, I've only made music videos, so and I've never made anything personal before either, so I didn't have any expectations going into it. But I've set myself up for failure, because I told myself, since this is your first like personal piece, this is something that really matters to you, it's going to be this emotional overload. So when I didn't have an emotional overload, I freaked out and was like kind of worried that, did I not make something genuine? Like, why am I not like just over the moon with emotions right now? I just finished this project that's been in my mind for 6 or 7 years. Like, why is it not affecting me like I thought it was going to? So it freaked me out for a little bit, because I just didn't. I set myself up for the year of writing to then making it, that like when I saw the final cut, it was going to be like this emotional ride, and like the same thing when we wrapped it, I thought the same thing. So it was just a weird time, and I remember calling my mom and just being like, I feel like I messed something up. Like, I feel really good about this, but why am I not emotional? Why am I? And I don't know why I treated being emotional about it as like a success. Like, for some reason, I said that it was only going to mean something if I felt something when we called wrap, or whenever we finished the edit, but those never happened. So that was the interesting part, is like, yeah, there was no sort of like emotional threshold there. It was just like, again, I just felt almost like numb, but like in a good way. Just like almost like game face, just like, okay, let's go to the next part now. There wasn't like a time where I wanted to stop and reflect. I wanted to move on to the next step, until I saw the final cut for the first time. And then that was the first time it was like seeing it in sort of its entirety. It was like, okay, this is something special. I feel really good about this. And like, I finally looked at it through the eyes of Parker, and not like a director.